A charging Grizzly covers 50 yards in 3 seconds. That's your whole clock. Draw, aim, fire, and you'll be lucky to get off 2 before it's on top of you. So the gun on your hip out here isn't a gun you get to think about. It either works in the worst 2 seconds of your life, or it gets you killed. And plenty of the people mauled or killed in Grizzly country every year were carrying a loaded legal firearm when it happened. In the only real study on the subject, 269 firearm incidents in Alaska, going back to 1883, the kind of gun you were carrying barely moved the odds at all. What actually gets you killed out here isn't a caliber, it's a bullet, and almost everybody's carrying the wrong one. So let's count them down, 10 guns that have gotten people killed out here. It starts with the ones you'd expect. It ends with the one that's probably on your hip. Number 10, Birdshot in a shotgun. A 12 gauge is one of the finest bear guns money can buy, right up until you feed it birdshot. Birdshot is built to kill a duck at 40 yards, a spreading cloud of tiny pellets that die under the skin. On a Grizzly, that isn't a weapon. It's a very loud way to make one angry. In 2011, a duck hunter near Girdwood, Alaska, put a load of birdshot into a brown bear that was already charging. It didn't stop, it didn't slow down. What saved him was switching to slugs, the load that should have been in the gun the whole time. And Girdwood isn't a freak. The same mistake turns up in write-up after write-up, right down to a 20 gauge loaded with number 6 shot near Choteau, Montana. Now somebody's already typing about the Montana fellow who dropped a charging Grizzly with a 410 and birdshot. He's real. In 2003, James Beeman did exactly that, because a couple of pellets happened to travel up the bear's nose and reach its brain. That's not a tactic. That's a lottery ticket that hit. A bear 12 gauge wears hard slugs, nothing lighter. The one that reached the brain doesn't change the rule, it proves it. Number 9, the pocket gun. The little 22, the 380 riding in your jacket. Its whole appeal is that it's already there. Light, flat, no holster, no decision. And that is exactly the problem. A Grizzly's skull is thick, sloped bone, engineered by a few million years to shrug off a swat from another Grizzly. To reach anything that ends a charge, the brain, the spine, the shoulder driving all that weight forward, a bullet has to punch through hide and muscle and bone, and a pocket pistol simply doesn't carry the mass to get there. In 1995 on Svalbard, a group of men faced a polar bear with a .22 rimfire. They fired. They hit it in the head. The bullets didn't penetrate the skull. One man was killed, another badly hurt. That was not a miss. That was a bullet doing everything it was asked to do and still not being enough. Here's the trap, and it's a cruel one. The pocket gun is the gun you'll actually have on you when it happens. But being on you was the only bear gun quality it ever had. It was never your bear gun. It was a prayer you could fit in a pocket, and prayers don't penetrate. Number 8, the gun with extra steps. This one isn't about power at all. It's about that 3-second clock from the top. A Grizzly doesn't announce itself. In the fall, in thick brush and head-high scrub, you can close to within a few yards of one before either of you knows the other is there. And when it comes at better than 30 miles an hour. Now do the arithmetic on your gun. A thumb safety you have to sweep off. A bolt you have to lift and cycle. A single action hammer you have to thumb back. Every one of those is a deliberate, separate motion, and every one eats a slice of a window you can measure in a single breath. It does not matter that the gun is a cannon if the cannon takes 3 steps and you've got time for 1. This is the item with no tidy anecdote, and here's why. The math never files a police report. The people it kills are just people who never got the shot off, and dead men don't get quoted in the paper explaining that the safety was still on. The clock is the whole proof. In bear country, the only good gun is one that's ready the instant your hand closes on it. Everything between deciding to fire and the shot going off is time you were never going to have. That's 4 in, and if you're still here, you already know this channel isn't going to sell you a caliber. What you get from me is straight talk about what actually stops a bear, not what sounds good around a campfire with a beer in your hand. If that's what you're after, do me the one favor, subscribe. It costs you nothing and it keeps the honest version of this stuff coming. Now, number 7. And this is where it turns, because from here on, we're not talking about junk guns, we're talking about good ones. Number 7, the Magnum you can't actually shoot. This is the ego buy. Somebody tells you a Grizzly is a big animal, so you reason backward to the biggest handgun on the wall, a Scandium featherweight 44 that weighs almost nothing, or a 500 Smith & Wesson, the hand cannon that ships with a muzzle brake because the factory knows precisely what it built. On the biggest of them, the recoil is so violent it can cause a double discharge, the gun jumping in your hand hard enough to trip a second, unintended round. On paper, it's the most gun on the rack. In your hand, the sights are somewhere over the next ridge before you can even think about shot 2. Now, I want to be straight with you, because the honest version matters more than the scary one. There is no famous case of a man who flinched and got eaten. I looked. By most tallies of these incidents, the big bores fired well run a clean record. The 454, the 460, the 500, when the shooter can handle them, they work. And that is exactly the point. The gun is not the liability. You flinching it is. A cartridge you can't control doesn't hand you more power. It hands you one wild shot and a bear that's still coming. Every range instructor alive will tell you the same thing. A gun you flinch is a gun you miss with. If you can't run it calm, in control, and back on the sights fast, it's not a bigger gun. It's a louder mistake. Number 6. The revolver you love run bone dry. Now we're standing on respectable ground, and that's the whole trap. A big double-action revolver, a 44 Magnum, a 454 Casull, is a genuinely proven bear gun. Ask 10 Alaskan guides what rides on their chest, and half of them will show you one. Fired well, the 44 has an almost spotless record in the accounts we've got, which is exactly why this one sneaks up on people. So I'm not here to tell you the revolver's wrong. I'm here to tell you that 5 or 6 rounds and no way to reload is a thin margin against an animal that keeps coming after it's hit. A committed grizzly can absorb multiple solid center hits and close the distance anyway. Its body doesn't get the memo that it's supposed to be dead yet, and you are not going to get a reload window in the middle of a charge. A few seasons back, an archery hunter named Mike Adams was run down by a sow with 3 cubs in Idaho's Island Park country. At point-blank range, he emptied a 44 Magnum into the charge. Afterward, investigators found no sign the bear had been hit at all. He had bear spray too. It was on his left side. He was fighting the bear with his right, and he never reached it. His arm and hand were badly bitten. He lived. And here's the reframe, because I don't want you walking away with the wrong lesson. The revolver isn't the mistake. Treating 5 rounds like it's plenty is. Number 5. The pump shotgun you never drilled. A pump gun stoked with slugs is no exaggeration one of the best things a human being can be holding in bear country. Cheap, brutal, dead reliable. There's exactly one catch, and the catch is you. A pump doesn't cycle itself. You have to drive the fore-end all the way back and all the way forward every single time, or the next round never chambers. Do it in a calm range session, and it's the easiest thing in the world. Do it with a grizzly filling your whole field of vision and your hands going to jelly. And a well-documented failure shows up under precisely that kind of stress. Short stroking. You don't run the slide, it's full travel. The gun doesn't feed, and now you're holding a very expensive single shot with a bear on top of you. That's not a knock on the design. It's a knock on the fantasy that you'll run it flawlessly the first time it ever counts, having leaned it in a corner for 3 years. Because the flip side is just as true. And it's the good news of this whole video. A pump you've worked until the motion is boring, until your hands do it without asking your brain first, is about as sure a tool as this country offers. The gun didn't fail those people. The assumption did, the idea that you'll rise to the occasion. You won't. You'll sink to your training, and if there wasn't any, that's a long way to sink. Number 4, the 10mm loaded out of the wrong box. The 10mm is the darling of modern bear country, and for real reasons. A Glock 20 holds 15 rounds in the magazine, 16 with one chambered. The follow-up shots come fast and flat, and it hits harder than any other common semi-auto. On paper, the smart pick. But here's the thing almost nobody checks. The 10mm you grab off a sporting goods shelf is very likely loaded soft. A 180 grain bullet at somewhere around 1,000 to 1,100 feet per second. That is the same velocity band as a .40 Smith & Wesson. There's history behind it. The FBI adopted the 10, decided full power was too much gun for its agents, and downloaded it. And that watered-down load is basically what fills store shelves today. So you bought a 10mm for the power, walked out with a grocery store box of hollow points, and now you're carrying a .40 caliber wearing a 10mm costume. The round only earns its fearsome name when it's loaded the way it was meant to be. A heavy 200 to 220 grain hardcast bullet driven hot from the outfits that specialize in it: Underwood, Buffalo Bore, Double Tap. Same gun, same magazine, wildly different animal on the other end. The 10mm isn't the mistake here. The box sitting next to it on the shelf, the cheap one, the one engineered to stop a man in a parking lot, that's the mistake, and it's $4 cheaper, which is exactly why people grab it. Number 3. Any handgun, if bringing it is the reason you left the long gun behind. I'll say this plainly because it's the least popular true thing in the entire conversation. The wimpiest rifle cartridge beats the mightiest handgun. It isn't close. A 12-gauge slug or an old 45-70 lever gun delivers force in a league no pistol on earth reaches. In October of 2025, a hunter in Island Park, Idaho, killed a charging grizzly with a rifle before the bear ever reached him. Clean, over, ruled lawful self-defense. A rifle in ready hands ends the story before contact. So why does nearly everyone in bear country still carry a handgun? Because the rifle gets set down. You lean it against a tree to field dress an elk. You stow it to work a fishing rod. You sling it on the pack to haul a load with both hands. And in every one of those moments, the only gun still on your body is the pistol on your chest. That's the honest trade, and it's not laziness, it's physics. You cannot do backcountry work with a long gun welded to your hands. The handgun isn't the answer to the bear problem. It's the compromise you make so you've got something the second the long gun is 10 feet and 4 seconds away. Carry it for that reason with a clear conscience. Just don't lie to yourself about which one it is. Number 2, the gun that wasn't on your body. This one kills more people than any caliber ever has, and it's got nothing to do with ballistics. The biggest, most powerful Magnum ever built has a 0% stopping rate from inside your tent, from the floor of your truck, from the bottom of your pack. A gun only works if it's on you when the 3 seconds start. And here's the ugly feedback loop. The more powerful the gun, the heavier and more punishing it is to wear all day. So the very guns bought for maximum power are the ones that get set down, stowed, and left behind. In 2020, a 22-year-old named Austin Pfeiffer was killed by a grizzly while moose hunting in Wrangell St. Elias in Alaska. The Park Service's own investigation found the attack was a surprise, and that a firearm or other deterrent was not readily available to him. Read that last part again. Not that he was unarmed, that whatever he had wasn't where his hands were when it counted. That is the entire difference between owning a gun and being armed, and it's a difference the marketing will never explain to you, because there's no upsell in it. And look at the fatal Grizzly maulings across the lower 48 this century, where investigators recorded what the victim carried. 12 of them since 2002, and in every single one, the victim wasn't carrying a firearm at all. They were people with nothing in their hands when it counted. A middling gun on your hip beats a perfect gun 100 yards away every single time, and it isn't even a debate. Number 1. The gun you never fired under stress, loaded with the wrong bullet. Strip away every caliber argument you have ever lost sleep over, and this is the thing that's actually putting people in the ground. Here's the receipt. That Alaska study I mentioned at the top, Smith and his colleagues, the only peer-reviewed work anyone's ever done on this, found that handguns stopped the bear 84% of the time, 31 out of 37, and long guns 76%, 134 out of 176. The rifle crowd will be stunned the handgun number is higher. They shouldn't be, because the gap between the two isn't statistically significant. It's noise. And the study says it flat out. The type of gun and the number of shots fired were not useful in predicting who walked away. The caliber war this whole hobby loves to fight. The peer-reviewed data says it's an argument about almost nothing. Now you'll hear a louder number on the forums, 98%. That comes from newer compilations of news reports, and the people who cite it aren't wrong about the important part. A huge share of the so-called failures in the record involve a gun that was never fired at all. Which is our whole point wearing a different hat. Pull out the guns that stayed in the tent, and the question that's left was never caliber. It's whether the thing ever got run at all. So what does decide it? Two things the marketing never mentions. The first is whether you can actually run your gun under a wave of pure animal terror. And you only buy that by drilling it cold until it's boring. In 2010, a geologist in Alaska met a charging grizzly with a .357 Magnum, fired 3 times, and missed with all 3. He was badly mauled and lived. That's not a caliber failure. That's a man missing a bear at spitting distance 3 times because 3 seconds of terror is a different planet than the range. The second thing is the bullet, and this is the one almost everybody gets wrong. A hard-cast flat-nosed slug is built to hold its shape and bore dead straight through hide and fat and bone to the vitals. A hollow point is built to blossom open and dump its energy shallow. A brilliant design for stopping a human attacker, and just about the worst possible choice for reaching deep into a bear. Same gun. Opposite outcome, decided entirely by what's loaded in it. And if you want it proven by a man instead of a chart, in 2016, Phil Shoemaker, a lifelong Alaska brown bear guide, stopped a charging brownie stone dead with a 9mm. A 9. The caliber this entire genre exists to sneer at. He did it on purpose, loaded with a 147-grain hardcast round he trusted to go deep, because Shoemaker quit believing the diameter of the bore was the thing keeping him alive a long time ago. The bullet beats the bore. It isn't even a contest. And then there's the thing that isn't a gun at all, which is why it doesn't get a number. Bear spray. I know, half of you just rolled your eyes. Look at the numbers anyway. The companion study to the one we've been quoting found bear spray stopped a brown bear's aggression about 92% of the time. And 98% of the people who used it walked away without a scratch worth the name. Those are better numbers than any gun on this list put up. And the people you'd expect to hate that finding, the firearms researchers themselves, come right out and recommend that everybody carry spray, gun or no gun. This was never guns versus spray. The people who actually survive bear country tend to carry both. There's exactly one rule tying them together, and it's the only rule in this whole video I'd stake your life on. Don't drop your gun to fumble for spray in the worst moment, and don't let the can on your belt fool you into leaving the real firepower back at camp. 2 tools, neither one is an excuse to skip the other. So look back at the list. Every gun on it has gotten somebody killed. And every single one of them, the Birdshot gun, the pocket pistol, the revolver, the 10mm, all of them, has also saved somebody's life. The study says the same thing the bodies do. The difference was never the caliber. It was whether the gun was on the body, whether the person could run it without thinking, whether the bullet went deep enough, and whether they drilled enough to land the 2 shots they were ever going to get. That's the whole video in one breath. So here's the checklist, 3 lines, and it's the only part worth memorizing. 1. Carry a gun you can wear comfortably all day, so it's actually on you when it counts. A middling gun on your hip beats a perfect gun in the truck. 2. Load it with hardcast that penetrates, not a pretty hollow point built to stop a man. 3. Shoot it cold, under stress, until the worst 2 seconds of your life or 2 seconds you've already lived 100 times on the range. Do those 3 things and the caliber stamped on the barrel becomes just about the least interesting fact about your gun. That's what this channel is for. The version that keeps you breathing, not the version that sounds good around a fire. If you want more of that, subscribe. And tell me down in the comments what's actually on your hip in bear country. And be honest, because this is the whole point. When's the last time you drew it cold and ran it under the clock? Because out here, the gun was never the thing that saved you. You were or you weren't.